So this was my first Olympic Games with Abbey. We were been together for over 10 years since she was like 11 or 12. Always a dream. I guess athletes always dream of going to the Olympics, and coaches do as well. So here's just a bit of a reflection of what happened and what I experienced. So obviously the goal was to make the Olympics. We wanted to make the Olympics, but on top of that, we didn't just want to make the Olympics. We'd already had a crack. Like Ned alluded to, we'd done Com Games, we'd made world champs, but we'd missed Tokyo. We were on the cusp, on the bubble, but it didn't fall in our favour. But definitely, it was a big must-do for us this year, and that made it a different kind of feeling to other years. So, like I said, the goal was to make the Olympics. The plan. So basically, the plan was to try and was to figure out how to get there. We had to identify our gaps physically and mentally, and I think Olympic years make it a lot more mental, a lot harder to kind of deal with stuff, especially if it doesn't go your way. We needed to run more, get fitter, which is easier said than done. We need to kind of grow our daily training environment and make that a bit more portable. Obviously, with Abby's got a good training group domestically, but that needs to push on. So, and then best practices. It's like we always look at the end of each year what we could do differently, what we could do better, what worked, didn't work, but more importantly, what are the best in the world doing. So, kind of looked at whatever's feasible and sustainable. We didn't think double thresholding was going to be for us, but definitely wanted to consider things like bicarb, speed Mondays, heavier periodized blocks, race tactics, and event demands. So what we decided to go with was altitude. Everyone is doing altitude, whether there's a lot of science that says, yep, it's good, but there's also a lot of anecdotal stuff out there that says it is good, but you can't really measure how good it is. All you know is that 95% of the people in the event that you're competing with are doing it. So do it and find out if it's right for you. And that's what we did. So this was our first real stab at altitude. She'd had some exposure in Flagstaff, but they were just like a week and then a race and then a week again. So there wasn't really, we didn't really train, to be honest. That was a couple of years ago. I'd been to falls before, probably for about 10 years in a row earlier as a coach, and saw a lot of the pitfalls, especially for a lot of the juniors that go up there. So I was mindful of that. So the timeline to Paris kind of looked like this. We had a 3-week block planned in Perisher. Stayed with some of Philo's guys. It was great. A good bunch of guys. Everyone worked together. And something that I'd missed as a coach was going away on a camp and meeting other people and training and trying to be collaborative. But basically, going into this year, we knew we had qualifiers. So we kind of wanted to try and capitalize on that and make it a year focused on training with limited racing. But obviously we had to support the domestic season re the policy. So when we did get to Perisher, we spent about 3 weeks up there. The plan was for 2 blocks this year, one in Perisher domestically to lead up to the domestic season, and then a small split block up at St. Moritz with a bit of a build and then a couple of races, and then finish off before we headed into the camp. But yeah, I mean, I won't go into too much detail. Obviously, most of you probably all know it's like we wanted to increase our red blood cell count, develop aerobically. We wanted to try the bicarb to see, obviously, if it was going to be okay. There's a lot of talk about bicarb being really, really good. Everyone in Budapest appeared to be using it, but also there was a bit of doubt as to whether your stomach could handle it. So you had to try it just to make sure. And yeah, it kind of worked out okay for us up there. So just a bit of a breakdown on where am I going? Yeah, here we go. So it was a very basic kind of training block. We didn't want to overcomplicate it. I wanted to go up there and fit in with what other people were doing. I see a lot of people go away on training camps and want to do their own specific stuff. But I think at this point in time, to go away and train with other people, the benefits kind of outweighed trying to be too fancy and specific. So Abby's fairly low volume runner anyway. We're building on that. That's one of our gaps. We kind of ran about 70 Ks a week, 6 days. We did 2 track sessions. Wow, it says we did one with bicarb. So we did a session, like a lactate session, a Ginderbine, without bicarb, and then did it the next week with. It was, I think it was really hard to measure, but that was the session. So we did a 1200, a kind of 5K effort, short recovery, a 400, 1500 meter effort, short recovery, and a hard 400. The second session with the bicarb got down to a 40, sorry, not a 40, a 54. And I don't think the lactate tester could go any higher than what it did. So we got up pretty high. I think that's just that lactate tester. So looking back, did it work? Was it a success? Yes and no. Abbey kind of adapted really well to the altitude, but didn't have any sickness or sleep issues. She fitted in socially, had a lot of fun, and got definitely fitter. She was in really good shape, but we made a big mistake going up there by not checking her iron late enough. We relied on an old test. We assumed it was okay, and that was a really big lesson for us last year, assuming that everything looks okay, but it wasn't. The cracks started to appear towards the end of that camp. We just assumed it was fatigue from the hard training, but it wasn't. The iron was really, really low, and that kind of carried on through the whole season until late, like post-domestic season. That was probably the biggest hurdle for me this year, was trying to quantify that and just get it fixed. It seemed like a really simple fix physically for me, but it didn't end up being a physically or mentally quick fix for Abbey. My dog's going a bit mental in the background there. So altitude was a success. It didn't scare me off from doing altitude. We're going to do it again. We're going up to Falls. The other big change that we wanted to incorporate, and this was, I was heavily influenced by Justin. I knew that his Speed Mondays, I think that's a patented term by Justin Rinaldi, Speed Mondays. So I might get sued after this. But yeah, so definitely we wanted to try speed. We recognized that definitely most, or a high percentage of athletes around the world were doing it. We recognized the event demand called for that as well. We wanted to be able to start faster, get Abbey into better positions to make better decisions, and be able to kind of use it as a tool in a toolkit. So we didn't see, I think like most things, they take time, and I don't think we saw a massive change until late in the season. And definitely from that now, I can see the difference. I can see the change. Like by the time we got to Paris, it had made a difference, but we kind of went backwards going forwards. It kind of changed the way she ran a little bit. Her mechanics changed. She became too front end heavy, and kind of lost a bit of power, I thought. So anyway, that was definitely one of the things that we kind of wanted to do, and is now incorporated in regularly. The domestic season, we'd already qualified for the 8 and the 15, but the landscape within the competition was changing, and it changed pretty rapidly last year. There were lots of girls running fast, like sub 2 became normal. I think look back a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and there were 2 athletes breaking 2 minutes. I think last year we had 6, maybe 7, I think. So, I mean, potentially there could be 8 athletes at a national finals that are under 2 minutes, which is pretty good. It's pretty good, but also makes it pretty hard because it is a marginal kind of event. You need to make good decisions to run a good 800. So we started well in Adelaide, bearing in mind we're still running on fumes a little bit with iron. But we managed to look really, really good going through Adelaide. I don't really know what the rest of the field were doing that day. They kind of got caught a bit flat-footed, but they soon caught up by the time Melbourne came around. And that was kind of like a pivotal meet for me. And at that point in time, I was beginning to get a little bit worried. I knew we were okay, and I knew we could get out of the hole, but I could feel that if we didn't do something about it, we might end up not in the best spot. Sydney was also a really good run, but there was some illness leading into that. And Albie Thomas was just a really good kind of training exercise and confidence builder for Abbey. So, and look, I think probably our biggest hurdle last year or last season was making a clear decision. We didn't really make a decision early enough. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. I've qualified in the 8 and I've qualified in the 15, but you kind of have to pick one, and that was a really tough decision for us. So in the end, nationals worked out really well for us. Got pre-selected, and that took some pressure off. And then we started thinking about overseas, but the indecision was still there. We'd come up with 2 or 3 plans to go over after nationals, but it didn't quite work out. I think I'm going to jump to this screen here. So it didn't quite work out. Abby went to Doha. The plan was to go Doha, LA pre, and then come back. We didn't get past LA. In fact, we didn't start LA. Doha didn't go well. I think it's the first time Abby finished last in a race. So that was another really big kind of mental hurdle that Abby had to pick herself up from. Coming back, things kind of lifted fairly quickly. We got back into a good training block, and started to build a bit more confidence. And she felt a bit more ready to go again. The second stage involved heading over, racing an 800 at Nice, 15 in Poland, a block in St. Moritz, coming back down for an 8 in Hengelo, and then another one in Luzerne. And all the 800s were really, really good. The 1500 was okay. But I was pretty confident that she'd come good at the right time leading into Paris. So that was a big relief to get to that big stage, feeling confident and ready to go. And to be honest, I wasn't really prepared for Paris. I'd been to Commonwealth Games, which for me was massive, and World Champs seems like a completely different vibe to the Olympics. It just feels like there's more intensity. So anyway, we got there, missed the camp. I'll go back on the camp just quickly because I'm running out of time. The camp was quite interesting. I found the camp hard. Not as hard as some people that had to sleep in the old accommodation. I did manage to get the Novotel air conditioning, but I found the downtime really, really hard at the camp, and I think some of the athletes did as well. It's like get up, eat, train, eat, wait, train, and then that's kind of it. It was I found it quite hard. And I could see that in other athletes there. Obviously, some athletes were got to the camp injured or had carrying injury, or some got there and got sick. You kind of just rubs off. So that was a big eye opener for me to try and make sure that we kind of factor that in next time we go away and be prepared for that. Once we got to the games, round one was a bit stiff, I think, for us with the rapid charge. Sixth fastest time, but didn't quite get us into the semi automatically. So we faced the rapid charge, which has now, I think, been made redundant. But it was a good experience. I think, I would have loved to have made the final. That was our goal. But looking back, I think Abbey did really well. I'm pretty proud of our performances there. It's easy to look back and go, we could have made moves in different spaces. We could have done this, could have done that. But I think ultimately, it's pretty hard. You don't really know what you're going to do when you're up against the best in the world and race in a stadium that's got 70,000 people. And it's kind of like a weird experience, the Olympics. It's like an amazing honor to get picked for the Olympics. And even as a coach, to just go and be part of that was amazing. And the high was really, really high. But it was kind of like a weird feeling of, yeah, I'm really happy that we made it, but it wasn't enough. It's like you always want a little bit more. So that took me a while to adjust to that. So yeah, it's a different year, the Olympic year, and I'll definitely take a lot out of my experience into the next one, which I've started to kind of look towards now, really. So lots of physical, mental challenges and logistical challenges to get through. So that's me. Sorry, I went a little bit over, and skipped a few bits and pieces, but that was my experience.
That's great. Thanks. Heaps of good insights. It's all right. I just threatened you that I was going to mute you at 15 minutes. I wouldn't actually do that. Pop your hand if you've got any questions for Gav. I'm going to start while you think about it. What do you do differently next time if you find that staging camp was quite difficult? Is it being intentional with that downtime? Is it removing yourself? What do you do if you end up in that same environment again?
Yeah, look, I think one of the biggest problems for the distance runners in that camp was the lack of kind of nice places to go for a run. It was not that great. Like the track and the facilities were really, really good, but you just got to be prepared for something that's different from home and something that you probably wouldn't, book yourself. You'd probably do a more of a recce personally to find out what it's like. No, look, I don't think there's too much more that you can do about it other than experience it and be a bit more mentally prepared for what it was going to be like. Abby was fine, I think. She didn't seem to complain about it. It was just me, really. I found I kind of work 10 to 12 hours a day and then I coach, and I found the downtime really, really hard to manage. I didn't take advantage of the downtime. I should have explored a bit more.
Good job. Philo's got a question.
Yep.
I was just interested in how you found that St. Moritz racing period. We did something very similar, and I sort of found a little bit of a compromise, like getting enough time at altitude, tapering enough to race well, and the travel between. So, like previously when we've been in Flagstaff, we've had 4 full weeks, and then we've gone down and raced off the back of it. So, the 2 weeks, the few races, and the week afterwards. Just comments on how you found that.
I don't know how much. Like I said, it's kind of hard to measure, isn't it? I don't know physically or scientifically how much benefit you got from doing it. But because I kind of just feel like for this year it was more experimental. Let's just see how it works. Because I know moving forward, we're basically going to need to spend more time at altitude than what we're doing now. If that we want to be the runner, if we want Abbey to be the runner that I hope she can be, I think that's an integral part of the journey to get exposed to it. So it was very much, let's just suck it and see. But it worked really well. She's a good traveler. The first race off the plane was kind of like, I think it was 5 days off the plane, 5-6 days off the plane. And so she tends to kind of travel quite well. She's not that big, so she doesn't have to go. I think economy is like business class for her. Really, she's got short legs. Yeah, definitely it's something that I mean, I know Jess kind of added altitude in this year as well. So I definitely there's something in it. I don't know how much of a difference it actually makes. But I know it's doing something.
Thanks.
Gotcha. Thanks for that, Gav.
No worries.
Pretty approachable guy. If anyone wants to ask questions, who doesn't want to feel comfortable in this forum or wants to get in touch with them, I'm sure it'll be open for a chat.
Hey, sorry, Gav. I'll ask you one question just about race tactics at the Olympics.
Yeah.
What would you change if you were going to it again and you knew what you knew now? Would you change anything about your race tactics in the heat or rep charge or semi?
No, look. I think a lot of I'm going to put this on Abbey because a lot of the tactics we spoke about didn't get employed. So I think we kind of spoke about being in a better position at 200 and in a better position at 400 and in a better position at 600, but it just didn't work out. So yeah, look, I think, I don't think you can be in last place going through the bell. And I don't think you can be in last. I don't think you can be in last place going through 200 unless you're that runner that can. And I don't think that was where Abby's at the moment. She needed to be a bit higher up, really. I think that's probably my answer on that. Hopefully we'll be a bit more aggressive this year.